Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to implement translations for any locale into your website using React, i18n Next and TypeScript. I will first set up the initial mechanism before implementing the translations themselves. I will then also implement and show you how to create scripts for batch import and export to CSV files for product owners, translators or other stakeholders. It's going to be a really satisfying journey that will allow you to add some serious additional user experience to your UIs. This video is based on a Medium article that I wrote alongside this project, so if you're interested in reading that and getting the code snippets, then you can head over there. There's also a GitHub repo with this entire project within it, complete with branches designed to match the chapters so you can follow along. The links to both of these resources can be found in the description. For all the code up to this point, please check out the branch on screen. If you then install the dependencies using npm install, and then run the project using npm run dev. Once running though, you'll see the following on localhost 5173. You'll notice that it is quite simple. We have a header at the top and a title and text in the body of the page. In the top right, a menu appears when account is clicked. This menu is supposed to simulate a common menu that would contain settings and logout options. Here, for brevity, we just have language, which at first contains 3 options. Having translations within our project means that we are going to have all the strings that you may usually find hard-coded in your UI components stored instead within JSON files. We will then reference the relevant key from a given translation file wherever we want the text to be displayed, using a function from React i18n Next. We will have a mechanism in place that knows which file to use, and hence which translated version of that string to display. We're going to be using 3 npm libraries to achieve our goal. Open a terminal and type the following. We need to now set up the config for this to work. Within the source folder, create a new folder and call it i18n. Then add a new file and name it i18n config.ts. Add the following to this file. Then create a second file in this same folder called i18n.ts and add the following code. Still in the i18n folder, add a third file called translationsprovider.tsx and add the following code. Finally, we are then going to wrap our entire application with the translations provider we just made. This will allow the system to react as needed and to pass in a different translation when the locale has been changed. We will set this part up in the next section. In the source folder, create a new folder and call it utils. In utils, add a new file called userconfig.ts and add the following code. In this file, we first export a constant called userconfig. This will be reused here as well as in other places in the code. We create a userconfig type which has a single property called Locale for us to store the locale when selected from the language submenu. We then have a getter and setter function for getting the config as well as setting it in local storage respectively. Now create a second file in utils, calling it locale.ts, and add the following code. This code uses the user config functions but also implements further functionality, encapsulating everything cleanly. In the function getCurrentLocale, we return the locale from local storage, but if it isn't present for whatever reason, we fall back to English. In this way, we can treat English as the default language. So if we have incomplete translation files, we will translate a given key in English at least instead of an error. We also have the locale enum, which will need to be updated whenever we add more languages to our application. At the root of the project, create a new folder and call it locales. Within this folder, we will have subfolders for each locale that we wish to have in our project. I'll start with British English by creating a folder and naming it ENGB. Finally, add a single file in this folder and call it translations.json. In this file, add the following. Notice that the locale's values for English, Portuguese and Chinese have values in their own language. This is by design and will replace the current strings in the languages menu. Currently, these options are all in English, so by maintaining these strings in their native languages in all locales, we can keep a consistent, better UX for the user. Now we want a second locale to use as well. I have selected Portuguese, but you can choose any language that you wish. So follow the previous steps and create a folder within locales, this time calling it PTPT. Add a translations.json file in this new folder and populate it with the following. Okay, so gotcha number one. You may have noticed that the welcome.message value has name in double curly braces in both files. This is the syntax for a variable, and the double curly braces are required. It must be identically named in both files, even though it is the English word name. Be careful with this information if you are working with translators, i.e. people who are actually translating these strings for you. In my experience, I have on more than one occasion had my translations break because the variables have innocently been translated as well. So make sure the communication is passed on as best as you can. These things happen, however, so also just be aware of this and check accordingly when they come back in to be implemented. Now head over to i18n.ts and add the following references for both the English and the Portuguese translation files. Okay, gotcha too. With the code in i18n.ts, you will likely have seen red squiggly lines on the import statements. Luckily, the fix for getting rid of them is simple. Head over to tsconfig.app.json and add the following to that file. Save, and then head back to i18n.ts to see the red lines have gone. You might have to be a bit patient and wait a couple of seconds. Head over to navbar.tsx and add the following. On line 11, we call the use translation hook from React i18 next and extract the T function as well as the i18n object from it. On lines 21 to 22, we're calling the T function in each menu item, passing in a string that references the Locale's English and Locale's Portuguese values respectively. This then passes the return string to the label value. Remember, these values are the same in all translation files, so the result will be the name of the locale in its native language at all times. Ignore the Chinese option for now. Next, we first get the locale, which is the substring that follows the colon in the action value of the menu item object. This is why it is at element 1. We then call change language on the i18n object from React i18 next, passing the locale in. Under the hood, this is what triggers finding the translations file for the selected locale. And it is why it is important that the folder name housing the translations.json file matches the locale precisely. Save this file and head over to the browser. Now all we need to do is find all the other hard-coded strings in our UI and replace them in the same way as we have here. I'm going to start with the navbar.tsx file and then move on to the app.tsx file, showing you in the browser as we go. Here you can see I'm using a trans component on the welcome.message string. This is because, as you may remember, it contains a variable, and this demonstrates how to pass a value in. Okay, gotcha 3. This isn't a technical one, but just some real-world experience. Of course, the translation quality is down to you, your team, your organization. This is a difficult problem to manage as your files get larger. In 2026, an obvious solution is to use AI to translate everything for us in seconds. This is an attractive proposition, but at the time of recording at least, I would exercise caution. In my experience, relying 100% on AI has not given perfect or even good results. But also, asking people to translate thousands of strings in a spreadsheet can be extremely fatiguing, leading to human error. Full transparency, I've used Google Translate for the text in this project. I should know better, really, as I have found this to be inaccurate. So if you're reading this and you can read Portuguese or simplified Chinese, then I apologise if the translations are terrible. But for the purposes of demonstrating, I hope they are good enough. I think there needs to be a compromise whereby the use of AI is used to do the initial heavy lifting, translating the newly needed strings. Once there though, human proofreading is definitely important. Of course, again, this is difficult to manage, especially if you don't have people who can read the language in question. I'm sure some third-party services are available that will mitigate this situation, but I haven't used them. Finally, it is perhaps just realistic to accept that there will be mistakes. These can be fixed over time, however, so the acceptance across the team and stakeholders that translating is going to be an iterative, evolving process is probably a safe attitude to have as well. We're going to start by installing two new dev dependencies, CSV parse and CSV stringify. In the root of this project, create a new folder called scripts. Then, within scripts, create another folder called i18n. Create a new file called i18n-config.json and add the following. Then add a second file called i18n-export.ts and add the following. Then thirdly, add another file, this time called i18n-import.ts, and add the following code. You will likely see some red squiggly lines in both the newly created import and export files. To fix this, create a new file at the root of the project called tsconfig.scripts.json and add the following. Then in tsconfig.node.json, add the following code. This changes the module resolution to Node and also references the scripts folder as well. The red lines should now have disappeared. Okay, and gotcha 4. We're not going to manually populate this new translations.json file, but we can't leave it empty either, as this will cause the script execution to break. For any new translations.json file that is currently empty, make sure to put an empty object inside. So within the Chinese translations.json file, just add the following. Now, in the Locales folder, add a new folder called i18n. Within here, add a translations.json file. Now let's go back to i18n.ts in the i18n folder. We have to import the new translations file for Chinese and add it to the translations resources object. So go to that file and add the following code. Okay, so next head over to the navbar.tsx file. We finally need to hook up the Chinese option in the menu to its actual translation. Please remember that in the future, when adding any new locales, you will need to add an option to this menu as well. Now quickly open the i18n config within the i18n folder and notice that the locales array on the first line already has the Chinese locale added to it. Now head over to the package.json file, and in the scripts object we need to add two new commands, so update it with the following. Run the following. You should now see a file created in the root of the project called i18n_export.csv. Open this file and you should see the following. This is awesome. Okay, so now we have a CSV file with all the current translations within it. Chinese at this stage will just have a header. So now open this in a spreadsheet. Now let's pretend that you've given this file over to your product owner or your translator, and that they've returned it populated with the new translation text. We now need to copy this into the root of our project. The old one can be deleted, renamed, or replaced. Either way though, the import is expecting the file to be named identically, so you could change the script to accept a different name, which is also an option, but for simplicity here I've just renamed it. Now with the file in place, run npm run i18n import. Now head over to your Chinese translations.json file. Now finally save, run, and go back to the UI. And now in the browser you should be able to select Chinese and see the entire UI update. From here you can continue to add new translations to the files. Do your best to keep them in sync, but if you don't, then any mistranslations in a file will fall back to English. If you are part of a team, then make sure you highlight any hard-coded strings that you find in PR reviews. Moving forwards, there should be an ongoing effort to keep the strings for UI components in the English translations file at least. You can of course add completely new locale. Just remember to create the new translations.json file under a new folder which has the exact locale code for a name within the locales folder. Make sure the empty file has an empty object inside it. Add the new locale code to the locale enum in locale.ts. Reference the new translations.json file in the i18n.ts file. Add the new locale code to the array in i18n config.ts. Add a new entry for the locale in the locales object within all translations.json files. Add a new option to the language options array in the navbar.tsx file, referencing the key created in the previous point. Export and get the translations added. If your product owner is obtaining the translations, then make sure they have the most up-to-date export and aren't using an older CSV file that could potentially lead to undoing anything when importing back in. Double check the translations to make sure things like variables are still intact. And then finally import it back into the project. And that's it. Thank you so much for getting to the end. I really hope this has been a useful and easy to understand tutorial. It has taken a lot of work to get everything together, and so if you are happy to like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Have a great day wherever you are, and see you next time.